Talia's hand froze on the crystal champagne flute she was carrying when she heard the sharp crack of a slap echoing through the marble ballroom. Her own cheek. The entire party of over 200 guests fell silent as Raphael's mother stood before her, fury twisting her elegant features into something unrecognizable. "You dare serve my guests with those filthy hands!" Victoria Moretti's voice dripped with venom loud enough for everyone in the opulent space to hear. "Know your place, girl. You're nothing but hired help pretending to be something you're not." Talia's eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people who already looked at her like she was invisible, like she was beneath their notice. The champagne had spilled across her black uniform, the expensive fabric now ruined, but that wasn't what made her heart pound with humiliation and rage. It was the way everyone watched in absolute silence, the way no one moved to help, the way they looked at her with pity or contempt or worse, indifference. Then she heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate, dangerous. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as Raphael Moretti walked through, his 6'3" frame radiating a fury that made even seasoned criminals instinctively step back. His dark eyes were fixed on one person, and one person only. His mother. "What?" His voice was deadly quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. "Did you just do?" If you want to discover how this story began and what happened after this explosive moment, subscribe to the channel and leave in the comments where you're watching from. Each view helps bring more stories like this one. 3 months earlier, Talia had stood in front of the Moretti mansion with her hands trembling and her resume clutched against her chest like a shield. The iron gates were taller than any building in her neighborhood, and the security cameras followed her every movement as she approached the intercom with growing trepidation. She needed this job, desperately. Her daughter, Maya, was 6 years old and deserved so much better than the cramped one-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, where gunshots punctuated their nights like some horrible urban symphony. Talia worked 3 jobs, waitressing at a 24-hour diner, cleaning offices at night when the city slept, and weekend shifts at a laundromat where the heat was unbearable in summer. But it still wasn't enough. It was never enough. When she saw the advertisement for a live-in housekeeper at a private estate with a salary that was triple what she currently made working herself to exhaustion, she knew she had to try. Even if the address made her stomach turn with fear and uncertainty. Everyone in New York knew the Moretti name. It was whispered in back alleys and shouted in courtrooms. It appeared in newspaper headlines and federal investigations. Raphael Moretti had inherited his father's empire at 25 and expanded it ruthlessly over the next decade with an intelligence and strategic brilliance that terrified his enemies. Now, at 35, he controlled everything from the docks to the diamonds that glittered on the fingers of Manhattan's elite. The gate buzzed open without a word, the mechanism smooth and ominous. Talia walked up the marble driveway, her second-hand shoes clicking against stone that probably cost more than her yearly rent. The mansion loomed before her, white columns that reached toward the sky, floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the morning sun like mirrors, and gardens that seemed to stretch forever into the distance. She had seen wealth before, serving tables in expensive restaurants where one meal cost more than her weekly grocery budget. But this was different. This was power. This was the kind of money that bought silence and loyalty and fear. A stern woman in her 50s answered the door before Talia could even knock. "You're the applicant." "Yes, ma'am, Talia Morrison." The woman's eyes swept over her with practiced efficiency, cataloguing everything from her carefully pressed dress to her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun. "I'm Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper. Mr. Moretti is particular about his staff. Very particular. Can you start immediately?" Talia's heart leaped with hope and terror. "Yes, absolutely. The position is live-in. You'll have Sundays off to visit family. Salary is as advertised, plus room and board. You'll answer directly to me, and you will never—" Mrs. Chen's voice hardened like steel. "Disturb Mr. Moretti, unless specifically summoned. He values his privacy above all else, understood?" Understood perfectly. That was how Talia found herself moving into a room that was larger than her entire apartment. With an actual attached bathroom, complete with heated floors and a window overlooking the rose garden, where morning dew made everything sparkle like diamonds. She cried that first night, pressing her face into a pillow that smelled like expensive lavender detergent, thinking of Maya safe with her grandmother until Talia could prove this job was stable enough to risk believing in. For 2 weeks, she barely saw Rafael Moretti. She heard him, his voice carrying through hallways as he conducted business in rapid Italian, the sound of car doors as he came and went at odd hours that suggested a life lived on a different schedule than normal people, the way the other staff moved faster and spoke quieter when he was home. But she kept her head down, worked harder than anyone else on the estate, and made herself indispensable to Mrs. Chen through sheer determination and attention to detail. Then came the night that changed everything forever. Talia was in the library at midnight, high on a ladder reaching for a book on the top shelf that Mrs. Chen had requested for inventory. The library was her favorite room in the mansion, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with first editions and rare manuscripts, leather furniture that smelled like old money, and windows that overlooked the city lights in the distance. She didn't hear him enter. Didn't know anyone was there until his voice cut through the silence like a knife. That shelf hasn't been dusted in months. She startled violently, the book slipping from her fingers. Strong hands caught it before it could hit the floor. Talia looked down to find Rafael Moretti standing at the base of her ladder, the book balanced in one hand, his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch in her throat. He was more devastating up close than she'd imagined. Sharp jawline covered with perfectly groomed stubble, olive skin that spoke of Mediterranean ancestry, dark hair swept back from his face to reveal high cheekbones and a straight nose that had probably been broken at least once, and a 3-piece navy suit that probably cost more than her car. But it was his eyes that held her captive, intelligent, calculating, and in that moment, unexpectedly amused. "Careful," he said, his voice a deep rumble that she felt in her chest. "That's a first edition Hemingway, worth more than most people's houses, maybe even this entire neighborhood." Talia descended the ladder carefully, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I'm sorry, Mr. Moretti. I didn't know anyone was still awake. I'll come back tomorrow." "You're the new housekeeper." It wasn't a question. He handed her the book, and their fingers brushed for just a moment. Electricity shot up her arm, hot and unexpected. "Talia, isn't it?" She was genuinely surprised he knew her name. Most wealthy people didn't bother learning the names of their staff. "Yes, sir." "You don't need to call me sir. Raphael is fine when we're alone." He moved to the bar cart in the corner, pouring himself 2 fingers of whiskey with practiced ease. "Why are you working at midnight? Mrs. Chen doesn't require night shifts." "Mrs. Chen asked for this inventory by Friday, and I have other duties during the day, so I thought, Mrs. Chen is asleep. She's been asleep for 3 hours. I asked why you're working when you should be resting." Talia hesitated, suddenly aware of how alone they were. The truth felt too vulnerable, too revealing, but something in his gaze made lying impossible. "I want to prove I deserve to be here, that I can earn enough to bring my daughter to visit on Sundays, that I'm worth the chance you took hiring me." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition perhaps, or understanding. "How old is your daughter?" 6. Her name is Maya." He was quiet for a long moment, swirling the whiskey in his glass and watching the amber liquid catch the light. "Make sure you take your Sundays off. Family is." He paused, his jaw tightening with some emotion she couldn't read. "Important. More important than any inventory list or proving yourself to anyone. You're already doing a good job. Mrs. Chen told me so." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed insistently. The softness vanished from his expression, replaced by cold calculation that reminded her exactly who he was. "Leave the inventory for tomorrow. Get some sleep, Talia." He walked out without another word, already speaking rapid Italian into his phone about shipments and territories, and things she probably shouldn't hear. Talia stood in the library for several minutes after he left, her heart still racing, the warmth from where their fingers had touched still lingering on her skin like a brand. She was in so much trouble and she knew it. Over the next month, Talia discovered that working for Rafael Moretti meant existing in 2 completely different worlds simultaneously. During the day, the mansion was filled with his associates, men in expensive suits who spoke in code and looked at her like she was just another piece of furniture, useful but forgettable. There were meetings in the dining room where voices were kept low and documents were passed across polished mahogany. There were phone calls conducted in Italian and Russian and languages she couldn't identify. There was an undercurrent of danger that hummed through everything like electricity through power lines. At night, it was quieter, and occasionally she would find him in unexpected places. The library became their unspoken meeting ground, a neutral territory where the rules seemed different. He was there most nights around 11, working through mountains of paperwork or making calls in Italian that sounded equal parts business and threat. Talia learned to bring him coffee without being asked. Black, no sugar. Always in the blue porcelain cup that was his favorite. And he learned that she spoke fluent Spanish, having grown up in a predominantly Latino neighborhood where bilingualism was survival. "You're wasted as a housekeeper," he said one night, watching her organize his files with practiced efficiency that came from years of managing chaos on a shoestring budget. "Have you considered other work? You have organizational skills that most of my executives lack." Talia looked up from the papers, surprised by the compliment. "I have a high school diploma and a 6-year-old daughter, Mr. Moretti. This is the best I can do, the best I've ever been able to do." "That's not true. And call me Raphael when we're alone, I've asked you before." "With respect, Raphael. You don't know what it's like to interview for jobs when you're a single black mother from the Bronx. People look at me and make decisions before I even open my mouth. They see my address, my skin color, my situation, and they've already written me off. This job, this is a miracle. I'm not going to risk it by reaching for more." His expression darkened with something that looked like anger, but she sensed it wasn't directed at her. "Anyone in my employment who treats you that way will regret it. I promise you that." The fierce protectiveness in his voice startled her, made her heart do something complicated in her chest. "Why do you care? I'm just your housekeeper." He was quiet for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then softly, "My mother was a maid before she married my father. She worked in a hotel, cleaning rooms for people who never saw her as human. She never let me forget what it meant to be dismissed because of where you came from, to be treated as less than." Talia had seen Victoria Moretti during her brief visits to the mansion, a woman dripping in diamonds and designer labels who criticized everything the staff did with a sharpness that drew blood. It was hard to imagine her scrubbing toilets or changing sheets. "She seems to have forgotten those lessons," Talia said carefully, not wanting to overstep. Raphael's laugh was bitter and sharp. "Wealth has a way of erasing uncomfortable memories. She's convinced herself she was always meant for this life, that her years of poverty were just a temporary mistake the universe corrected. But you don't do that, do you? You remember exactly where you came from. Every single day, every single hour." They were standing too close now, somehow having moved toward each other during the conversation. Talia could smell his cologne, expensive, masculine, intoxicating, something with notes of cedar and spice. His hand lifted, as if to touch her face, then dropped back to his side with visible effort. "Go to bed, Talia, it's late and you work too hard." She fled before she could do something foolish. The following Sunday, Talia brought Maya to visit for the first time. Her daughter's eyes went wide as saucers as they walked through the gates, her small hand gripping Talia's tightly. "Mama, is this a castle? Are there princesses here?" "Something like that, baby. It's just a very big house." They spent the afternoon in the garden, Maya running through the roses with pure joy, while Talia watched from a wrought iron bench, feeling like she could finally breathe for the first time all week. This was why she was doing this. For moments like these, where her daughter could be a child without worrying about the sirens or the angry voices through thin walls, or the fear that permeated their old neighborhood. "She's beautiful." Talia jumped, her heart racing. Raphael stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, dressed casually in jeans and a black shirt that somehow made him look even more dangerous than the suits did. He was watching Maya with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you were home today. We can leave if—" "Stay, please." He walked closer, sitting on the bench beside her without asking permission. "I don't get to see much innocence anymore. It's—" He trailed off as Maya noticed him, and ran over with the fearlessness that only children possess. "Are you a prince?" Maya asked, completely unafraid of this man who made grown criminals tremble. Raphael's lips twitched with the hint of a smile. "No, just a man with a very big house. Here's the biggest house I've ever seen. Do you have a playground? My mama said maybe you have a playground. I don't, but I should." He glanced at Talia, and she saw something shift in his expression. "I'll have one built. Would you like that?" "Mr. Moretti, you don't need to—" "Raphael," he corrected firmly, then to Maya, "would you like that? A playground with swings and slides and maybe a treehouse?" Maya's squeal of delight was answer enough. She threw her arms around Raphael's neck in a spontaneous hug that made him freeze for just a moment before his arms came up to hold her gently, carefully, like she was made of glass. That night, after Maya had gone home with Talia's mother, reluctant to leave but already planning her next visit, Talia found Raphael in the library again. He looked up when she entered, setting down the report he'd been reading. "Thank you," she said softly, standing in the doorway, "for being kind to her, for making her feel special. She reminds me why some things are worth protecting." He stood, crossing the distance between them in 2 strides that ate up the space. His hand finally did what it had wanted to do for weeks, cupped her cheek with unexpected gentleness. "You both do. We're not your responsibility. Maybe not." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone and she felt the touch everywhere. "But I'm making you mine anyway. I can't seem to help myself." Before she could respond, before she could process what he was saying, alarms shattered the moment. Red lights flashed throughout the mansion as his security system activated with blaring urgency. Raphael's entire demeanor changed in an instant, the gentleman disappearing behind the dangerous one. "Get to your room, lock the door, don't come out until I come get you personally." "What's happening?" Someone breached the perimeter. He pulled a gun from his desk drawer with practiced ease. "Go, now. Don't make me worry about you while I'm dealing with this." Talia ran, her heart pounding with fear. Talia pressed her back against her locked bedroom door, her phone clutched in her trembling hands, every muscle in her body tense with fear. She could hear shouting echoing through the mansion's corridors, footsteps running in multiple directions, and sounds that might have been gunshots in the distance, sharp cracks that made her flinch and pray. Her first instinct was to call Maya, to make sure her baby was safe. But it was past midnight and her mother would be asleep. Waking them would only terrify them both. And what could she possibly say? That she was hiding in a mansion owned by a mafia boss while people with guns ran through the halls. So she waited in the darkness, alone with her fear. An hour passed with agonizing slowness. Then 2. The noises had stopped about 40 minutes ago, but no one came for her. She tried Raphael's number 3 times, but it went straight to voicemail each time. The silence was somehow worse than the chaos had been, because it left her imagination to fill in the terrible possibilities. Finally, at 3 in the morning, a knock at her door made her jump. "Talia, it's me. Open the door." She threw open the door without hesitation. Raphael stood there, his white shirt stained with blood that looked black in the dim hallway lighting, his knuckles split and swollen, his hair disheveled from whatever violence he'd participated in. But alive. He was alive. "Oh my God." She pulled him inside immediately, her hands already checking him for injuries with trembling fingers. "Is this your blood? Are you hurt?" "Most of it's not mine." He caught her wrists gently, his touch careful despite the violence that clung to him. "I'm fine." "I've had worse than this." "You're bleeding." "I've had worse," he repeated, but he let her guide him to her bathroom anyway. Let her sit him on the closed toilet while she retrieved the first aid kit she kept stocked. His eyes never left her face as she worked, cleaning his knuckles with antiseptic that had to sting, but he didn't flinch. "Who was it?" she asked quietly, her hands steadier now that she had a task to focus on. "Rival family, the Calabrases. They thought they could send a message by attacking my home while I slept." His jaw clenched with barely controlled fury. They were wrong. Very wrong. Talia bandaged his hands carefully, trying not to think about what he'd done to whoever had breached his security, trying not to think about the blood on his shirt, or the coldness in his eyes when he talked about his enemies. Is it over? For now, I made it very clear what happens to people who threaten what's mine. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone in a gesture that was becoming familiar. I need you to know something. As long as you're under my roof, you're under my protection. Nothing will touch you, no one will harm you. Do you understand? Raphael, do you understand? His intensity was almost frightening, the danger in him barely leashed. Yes, I understand. He leaned forward, his forehead resting against hers in a gesture of such intimacy that it stole her breath. They stayed like that for several heartbeats, breathing the same air, the violence of the night giving way to something more dangerous between them. I should go, he whispered, but made no move to leave. You should. Neither of them moved for a long moment. I can't stop thinking about you, Raphael admitted, his voice raw with honesty. Every night I find excuses to be wherever you are. I learn your schedule so I can catch glimpses of you working. I stayed home this Sunday just to see you with your daughter, to watch you smile. This isn't... He pulled back to look at her with those dark, intense eyes. I don't do this. I don't feel this way. I don't let people in. Talia's heart was thundering so hard she was sure he could hear it. I'm your employee. I know. This is impossible. I know. Your world and mine, they don't mix. They can't. I don't care about that. His hand slid into her hair, gentle despite the violence still clinging to him. Tell me to leave, and I will. Tell me this is insane, and I'll never bring it up again. But don't tell me you don't feel it too. Don't lie to me about that. She should tell him to leave, should remember every reason this was a terrible idea, should protect herself and Maya from the complications and danger that would come from getting involved with a man like Raphael Moretti, should remember that she was the help and he was the boss, and those lines existed for a reason. Instead, she pulled him down and kissed him. It was like striking a match in a room full of gasoline. Everything ignited at once. His hands were in her hair, pulling her closer. Her back was against the wall, though she didn't remember moving. He was kissing her like she was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. And she was responding with equal desperation, months of tension and denial pouring into this moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Raphael pressed his forehead to hers again. This changes everything, he said, his voice rough. I know. My world is dangerous. There will be nights like tonight. I know. I won't be able to let you go now. I won't be able to pretend I don't feel this. I know. He kissed her again, softer this time, like a promise. Stay with me tonight. Just sleep. I need to know you're safe. I need to hold you. They ended up in her bed, Raphael fully clothed despite the blood on his shirt, holding her against his chest as the sun began to rise through her window. For the first time in years, Talia felt completely safe in a way she'd never experienced before. But safety was just an illusion in Raphael Moretti's world, and illusions always shattered eventually. The next 2 months were the happiest of Talia's life, a dream she kept expecting to wake from. Raphael was careful to keep their relationship private from his business associates and the dangerous men who frequented the mansion, but within the estate itself, everyone knew. Mrs. Chen pretended not to notice when Raphael would pull Talia into empty rooms for stolen kisses. The security team looked the other way when he would slip into her room at night, staying until dawn. The household staff smiled knowingly when they saw the way he looked at her. Maya adored him, which meant more to Talia than anything else. He'd kept his promise about the playground, and every Sunday when she visited, Raphael would spend hours playing with her, pushing her on swings until she screamed with laughter, catching her at the bottom of slides, teaching her Italian phrases that made her giggle. He was patient and attentive in a way that made Talia's heart ache. He loves you, Talia's mother said one Sunday, watching Raphael and Maya in the garden from the kitchen window. Both of you. I can see it in everything he does. Mama, don't mama me. I've seen how that man looks at you, like you hung the moon and stars just for him. Her mother squeezed her hand. But be careful, baby. Men like that have enemies. Men like that bring danger. I just want you safe. Talia knew. She'd heard the late-night phone calls about territories and shipments, seen the tension in his shoulders when certain names were mentioned, watched him disappear for days at a time on business that he wouldn't discuss. But Raphael never brought that darkness around her or Maya. With them he was gentle, patient, present in a way that made her believe in possibilities she'd never dared to dream. Then Victoria Moretti came for an extended visit, and everything began to unravel. Talia knew Raphael's mother disapproved of her. It was obvious in every clipped greeting, every critical assessment of the housekeeping that was never quite perfect enough, every pointed comment about appropriate boundaries between staff and family. But Raphael made it clear that his personal life was not up for discussion, and Victoria's visits had always been brief, a day or two at most before she returned to her Manhattan penthouse. This time was different. She was staying for 2 weeks, and she made Talia's life miserable with calculated precision. The silver needs polishing. Did you even look at it? These flowers are wilting. I expect fresh arrangements daily. Your uniform is wrinkled. This is unacceptable in a household of this caliber. It didn't matter that the silver gleamed, the flowers were freshly cut that morning, or that Talia's uniform was pressed to perfection. Victoria was looking for reasons to criticize, to put Talia back in what she considered her proper place. Raphael noticed, of course. His anger simmered just below the surface. "She's leaving tomorrow," he promised Talia one night as they lay in her bed. "I've made it clear this behavior stops. She's your mother. I don't want to come between you. She's making that choice herself." He pulled her closer. "You're my priority now. You and Maya. She needs to accept that or stay away." But Victoria wasn't done. Not even close. The charity gala was held at the mansion, a glittering event to raise money for children's hospitals. Attended by politicians and business moguls, and several families Talia recognized from news reports about organized crime. Raphael had insisted Talia attend not as staff, but as his date, and he'd bought her a dress, midnight blue silk that made her feel like a princess, and told her he was done hiding what she meant to him. "My mother will be there," he warned her the night before, his hand cupping her face. "She won't make it easy. She'll probably make it very, very difficult. I can handle it. I'm stronger than I look. I know you are. But you shouldn't have to handle her cruelty." His jaw tightened. "If she crosses a line, I'm ending this. I mean it." She'd been naive to think she could handle Victoria Moretti's malice. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light across marble floors, tables draped in ivory silk, centerpieces of white roses and gold accents. Talia stuck close to Raphael, his hand steady on her lower back as he introduced her to associates, and made it clear through every gesture that she was under his protection. Some people were kind, others were coldly polite. But all of them noticed, and the gossip spread like wildfire through the crowd. Victoria arrived an hour into the event, dripping in diamonds worth more than Talia would make in a lifetime, surrounded by her society friends who looked at Talia with barely concealed disdain. Her eyes found Talia immediately, and something ugly flickered in them, something that made Talia's stomach drop with dread. "Raphael, darling," Victoria air-kissed her son's cheeks with practiced elegance, "I see you've brought help to the event. How progressive of you." "Mother, you remember Talia, my girlfriend." Raphael's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "How could I forget?" Victoria's smile was ice with poison underneath. "Though I'm surprised you're not in uniform, dear. I almost didn't recognize you dressed so far above your station." Talia felt the insult like a physical slap, but she kept her expression neutral through years of practice hiding hurt. "Mrs. Moretti." The evening deteriorated from there with methodical cruelty. Victoria made sure to loudly discuss appropriate matches for her son whenever Talia was within earshot, rattling off names of women from old money families. She questioned whether Talia even understood the political importance of the event, speaking over her when she tried to respond. She suggested Talia might be more comfortable with her own kind instead of pretending to fit into a world where she clearly didn't belong. Raphael's fury was a living thing, radiating from him in waves, but Talia squeezed his hand hard, silently begging him not to make a scene. This was his mother, his family. She wouldn't be the reason they broke. wouldn't let him sacrifice that relationship for her. Then came the moment that shattered everything into pieces, too sharp to ever put back together. Talia was serving champagne to guests. She'd volunteered to help the overwhelmed catering staff, needing something to do with her hands, needing to feel useful, when Victoria appeared beside her like a ghost of judgment. "Playing dress-up doesn't change what you are," Victoria hissed, quiet enough that only Talia could hear, her voice dripping with venom. "You're a maid, a single mother from the ghetto who trapped my son with your—" "That's enough." Raphael's voice cut through the venom like a knife. He'd appeared out of nowhere, his expression colder than Talia had ever seen it, colder than when he'd faced down armed men who'd breached his home. But Victoria was past caring about consequences. Something in her had snapped, and in front of the entire ballroom filled with New York's elite, she grabbed the champagne tray from Talia's hands and threw it to the floor with violent force. Crystal shattered with sounds like breaking bones. Expensive wine pooled across marble in spreading darkness. "She's making a mockery of this family," Victoria's voice carried across the now silent room, every conversation stopping, every head turning. "Parading around like she belongs here when she's nothing but a—" The slap echoed. Talia's cheek exploded with pain and humiliation, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of 200 witnesses who would talk about this for months, who would make her into a story they told at parties. That was when Raphael walked through the crowd with murder in his eyes, every person instinctively stepping back. "What?" His voice was deadly quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. "Did you just do?" Victoria lifted her chin defiantly, unrepentant. "I put the help in her place. Someone needed to before this goes any further." "The help?" Raphael's laugh was devoid of humor, sharp and cutting. "You just struck the woman I love in front of everyone in this room, in my home." Gasps rippled through the crowd like waves. Talia's heart stopped, then raced. "Raphael, don't be ridiculous. You're right. What you did wasn't ridiculous. It was unforgivable. It was cruel." He turned to his security team with cold authority. "Escort my mother out. She's no longer welcome in any property I own, any business I control, any space I inhabit. She's dead to me." Victoria's face went white with shock. "You can't—" "I just did. You taught me many things, Mother, but the most important was this. Respect is earned, not bought. Talia has earned more respect in her fingernails than you've shown in your entire life." He looked at the assembled crowd with cold challenge. "Let me be crystal clear so there's no confusion. This woman is under my protection. She is my priority. My family. Anyone who treats her with anything less than the respect she deserves will answer to me personally. Anyone who questions this will learn exactly what that means." He turned to Talia then, and his expression transformed, the fury melting into concern and tenderness as he cupped her burning cheek with infinite gentleness. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and she saw the genuine pain in his eyes. "I should have ended this the moment she opened her mouth. I should have protected you better." Talia couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They spilled down her cheeks in hot streams as Raphael pulled her against his chest, shielding her from the staring crowd and their whispers. "Get her out," Raphael ordered his security, nodding at his mother with cold finality. "Now. And make sure she understands what happens if she ever comes near Talia or Maya again." As Victoria Moretti was escorted from the ballroom, still protesting, still demanding, still refusing to acknowledge what she'd done, Raphael kept Talia in his arms like she was the most precious thing in his world. "We're leaving," he announced to the room without apology. "The gala can continue without us. Enjoy your evening." He led her out of the ballroom, through the mansion that had become both prison and sanctuary, to his car. They drove in silence for over an hour, Talia's hand clutched in his like he was afraid she'd disappear, until they reached his private beach house, a place he'd mentioned, but she'd never seen. "I meant what I said," Raphael told her, as they stood on the deck overlooking the ocean under moonlight, waves crashing against sand in endless rhythm. "I love you. I have for months, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt your worth again, never feel that shame again. Your mother made her choice. I'm making mine." He pulled her close against him. "You, always you, and Maya. You're my family now, the only family that matters. Talia looked up at this powerful, dangerous man who had chosen her over blood, over legacy, over everything he'd known. "I love you too," she whispered, the words feeling like both revelation and surrender. His kiss tasted like salt air and forever, and promises she was finally brave enough to believe. The fallout from the gala was immediate and brutal, and played out across social media and society pages. Victoria Moretti didn't go quietly into the night. She gave interviews to society magazines about her son being manipulated by an opportunist. She rallied her wealthy friends to boycott his businesses and fundraisers. She threatened legal action over her removal from family properties. She called Talia every name imaginable, and some that had to be invented. Raphael responded by cutting her off financially, closing accounts, cancelling credit cards, removing her name from properties, and releasing carefully worded statements through his lawyers about family members who failed to embody the values of respect and dignity. The battle was public and ugly, and dominated headlines for weeks. "She'll never forgive you for this," Talia said one evening as they watched the news coverage, Maya asleep upstairs, the house quiet around them. "I know, but I'll never forgive myself if I let her treat you that way. If I chose her cruelty over your dignity." He pulled her closer on the couch, his arms solid around her shoulders. "Do you regret this, any of it?" "Never. Even with everything that's happened, everything you've had to endure." "Especially because of it." Talia turned to face him fully, needing him to understand. "You showed me that love doesn't compromise, that choosing someone means defending them, even when it's hard, even when it costs you everything. That's not something I regret. That's something I'll treasure forever." "Always," he promised, and sealed it with a kiss. But Victoria wasn't done, not even close. 2 weeks later, Talia received a call from Maya's school that made her blood run cold. Her daughter had been removed from class by a woman claiming to be her grandmother, removed without Talia's permission, without proper authorization, taken by force of manipulation and lies. The terror that gripped Talia's heart was unlike anything she'd felt before, primal and absolute. She called Raphael, barely able to get the words out through her panic, and he mobilized his entire security team within 2 minutes. They found Victoria at a park 6 blocks from the school, Maya crying on a bench beside her, confused and scared. Raphael's control snapped completely. "If you ever—" His voice was deadly quiet as he stood over his mother, and even Victoria flinched back. "Come near my family again, I will destroy you, not as your son, as the man who controls everything you depend on to maintain your lifestyle, every account, every property, every connection, every friend, gone. And then I'll make sure every person you've ever known understands exactly what you did today." Victoria's face twisted with rage, and something that might have been fear, maybe even regret. "She's not your—" "She is, and you just committed kidnapping. You took a child from her school without parental consent." He nodded to his security team with cold authority. "Call the police, file charges, do it now." "Raphael, please." For the first time, Victoria's voice cracked with genuine fear. "You had choices. You made them. You chose cruelty over love, pride over family, status over basic human decency." He picked up Maya gently, and she immediately wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. "Stay away from us. If I see you near my daughter again, if I hear you've tried to contact Talia, if you breathe in our direction, there won't be warnings. There won't be second chances. Do you understand me?" The legal proceedings were swift and merciless. Victoria was charged with attempted kidnapping, though Raphael's lawyers negotiated a plea deal that kept her out of prison in exchange for a permanent restraining order, backed by criminal penalties. She was to never contact Talia, Maya, or Raphael again. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. It should have felt like victory, like justice served. Instead, Talia watched Raphael in the weeks that followed, seeing the pain he tried to hide behind business and routine. He'd lost his mother, not to death where there might eventually be peace, but to choices, hers and his, and that wound bled differently. "She made me choose," he said one night, staring at the ceiling as they lay in bed together. "Between her and you, between who she wanted me to be and who I actually am. I'm sorry, I never wanted—" "Don't be sorry. Never be sorry." He pulled her closer, his arms tight around her. She taught me what kind of man I never want to be. Someone who values pride over people, status over character, blood over chosen family. He kissed her forehead with tenderness. You taught me what I want to be, the kind of man my daughter deserves to look up to, the kind of partner you deserve. Talia's breath caught at the word. Your daughter? If you'll let me be that for her, if she wants me to be. He shifted, reaching into his nightstand, and pulled out a small velvet box that made Talia's heart stop. And if... His voice was thick with emotion now, vulnerable in a way she'd rarely heard. If you'll let me be your husband. The ring inside was simple and elegant and perfect, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds that caught the light like stars. I know this isn't conventional, Raphael continued, holding her gaze. I know my world is complicated and dangerous. I know I come with enemies and complications and a family situation that's a disaster. But I promise you this, I will spend every single day earning the honor of being your partner. I will protect you and Maya with everything I have and everything I am. I will choose you over everything, every single time, no matter what it costs me. Talia's tears flowed freely now, years of walls crumbling. Yes, 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 I'll marry you. Yes, you can be Maya's father. Yes to all of it. Yes to forever. He slipped the ring on her finger with shaking hands and kissed her like they had all the time in the world, like they were the only two people who existed. 3 months later, they married in a small ceremony on the beach, barefoot in the sand with waves as their symphony. Just them. Maya serving as flower girl and giggling as she scattered petals, Talia's mother crying happy tears, and a handful of trusted friends who'd proven their loyalty. Raphael's vows made grown men cry, promising to honor and protect and cherish until his last breath. The adoption papers for Maya were finalized a week later, her new birth certificate listing Raphael Moretti as her father. Life wasn't perfect after that. It never could be. Raphael's business still demanded his attention and sometimes took him into danger. Threats still emerged from rival families who saw opportunity in his happiness. The society pages still gossiped about the mafia boss who'd chosen a former housekeeper over his own mother, making their relationship tabloid fodder. But in the quiet moments, when Raphael read bedtime stories to Maya in Italian, teaching her the language of his ancestors, when he pulled Talia into his arms at the end of long days and breathed like he could finally relax, when they sat together watching their daughter play in the garden he'd built for her, none of the outside noise mattered. Victoria sent one final letter 6 months after the wedding, delivered through lawyers. Talia found it in the mail and considered burning it without reading, but Raphael stopped her. Open it, he said quietly. Then we can finally close this chapter completely. The letter was short and written in shaking handwriting. Raphael, I see the photos in the magazines. Your wife, your daughter. The life you've built without me. I don't understand it. I probably never will. But I see something in your face in those photos that I never saw when you were with me. Peace. Real peace. Maybe that's worth more than my pride. Maybe that's worth everything I lost. I won't ask for forgiveness, I don't deserve it, and we both know that. But know that I see now what I couldn't before, what my pride and prejudice blinded me to. You chose right. She makes you better. She makes you happy. That should have been enough for me. I failed you as a mother. That's something I'll carry forever. V, it wasn't an apology, not really. It wasn't enough to erase the damage or heal the wounds, but it was acknowledgement, and sometimes that was all you could get. Raphael read it once, carefully, then put it in his desk drawer without comment. It doesn't change anything, he said simply. I know. But maybe someday... Maybe, Talia agreed, because she understood forgiveness was a process, not an event. But not today. Not yet. Today we have everything we need right here. She was right, as she so often was. That night, after tucking Maya into bed and standing in the doorway watching her sleep peacefully in her princess bedroom, Raphael pulled Talia close against him. Thank you, he whispered into her hair. For what? For teaching me that family is chosen, not just inherited. That love is action, not just words. That justice and mercy can coexist if you're brave enough. He turned her to face him, his hands framing her face. For being brave enough to let me love you when you had every reason not to trust me. Always, she promised, using his word. I'll always choose you too. And she meant it with every fiber of her being. 2 years later, Talia stood in the library, their library now, filled with new books and Maya's artwork on the walls, watching as Raphael taught 8-year-old Maya how to play chess. Their son, 6-month-old Raphael Jr., slept peacefully in her arms, his tiny fist wrapped around her finger. "Checkmate, Papa," Maya crowed triumphantly, her face glowing with pride. "Impossible. I'm the undefeated chess champion of this family. I've never lost a game. Not anymore. I beat you fair and square." Raphael looked at the board in genuine surprise, studying the pieces, then threw his head back and laughed, a sound that still made Talia's heart skip beats. "You got me, Principessa. Fair and square. You're officially the chess champion now." Maya beamed with pride, already planning her victory dance. Later that evening, after both children were tucked safely in bed, Talia found an envelope on her desk in the study Raphael had created for her. Inside was a check for $500,000 and a note in his distinctive handwriting. "For the community center you've been dreaming about, the Bronx deserves a safe place for kids like Maya, for kids like you were, for kids who need to know there's hope. Build it. I'll handle the logistics and security. Make your dream real." She found him on the terrace overlooking the city lights that stretched endlessly into the distance. "You can't just—" "I can. I did. Don't argue with me about this." He pulled her against him, her back to his chest, his arms wrapped around her. "You transformed my life completely. Let me help you transform theirs, please." The Talia Morrison Community Center opened a year later, offering after-school programs, job training, college prep courses, and hope to a neighborhood that had seen too little of all three. Maya cut the ribbon wearing her best dress. Raphael stood beside Talia with Raphael Jr. in his arms, and for the first time in her life, Talia understood that happy endings weren't just for fairy tales. They were for people brave enough to choose love over fear, justice over blood, each other over everything else in the world. Standing there watching children pour into the center she'd built, Talia felt Raphael's hand find hers and squeeze gently. "Proud of you," he whispered. "We did this together. Everything together. That's the promise." And it was a promise they kept every single day for the rest of their lives. This story has reached its end. If it touched your heart in any way, leave your like and share it with someone who also enjoys emotional stories. New stories are coming soon. Until next time.